Authors, having a good book does not mean that you have a book that sells. You can have a book that has a great idea or a great concept, and you can miss the mark when it comes to how you write it, and it will really not have an audience. I'm part of several different author groups, and I see this all the time, people feeling frustrated because they've written their masterpiece, right? And they love it, and the people who read it love it, but it doesn't sell because it wasn't written to sell. And this is something that I think we should put an end to. And so I have brought Angela Eschler here today. This is our second video in the series. In our last video, we talked about the publishing industry, publishing trends, and marketing your book. And now in this part, we're going to talk specifically about how to write your book in order to make sure that it is set up to sell. So Angela, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you. This is really good times.
Yeah. So I'll just give you an introduction. First of all, if you haven't watched part one, I recommend that you go back and write it. But Angela runs Eschler Editing. They're an award-winning editing company. She has over 20 years of experience in the publishing industry, and she has helped many books get out there and become profitable, hit those bestseller lists. And she knows what she is talking about, you guys. I have worked with her team personally on my books. And oh my gosh, they are so much better. It's like they can see the potential and wipe away all of the rough edges and bring me back something that just really works. So I'm excited to jump in and talk through what we can do on the writing level to make sure that our books are going to be successful.
Great, thank you. Good topic.
Yeah, your topic too. It's totally up your alley.
So do you want to talk about kind of diving in and who you're speaking to with your audience? And
yeah, I think we should talk about audience and dialing in. I also think we should talk about genre expectations.
Okay.
And then I'm sure we'll come up with other good things from there too.
Okay. Okay, so the first thing, just briefly in the last video, we talked about choosing the right angle, and you might also hear the word branding. And that's basically what your message is saying and who is it for, right? And so we talked about getting really specific on who your audience is. So you're not almost ever writing a book to all the stakeholders on a certain topic, right? So for example, I recently heard about a book that he wanted to write. It was about suicide, but it was for all the stakeholders. So it was for the policeman that had to deal with the situation. It was for the parents. It was for like admin, medical people, right? And my first thought was, how in the world is he going to market that book, right? Because if I were a parent that was grieving or worried about something like that coming up, I would not be looking at a book that lists how it's going to help policemen and medical people, right? And so a lot of times authors think I'm going to write the seminal work on whatever the topic is. And that doesn't actually work in terms of speaking to an audience and creating people that are passionate about your work and passionate about following what you do. And kind of looking to you as kind of their leader in the transformation in that area of their lives. And so really a lot of us have a lot of books in us, and that's what you need to do is parse out which parts of those books are for who, and then write that book for those people, right? And so one of the things to make sure you're doing is getting really specific on that, that person you're writing to, and then asking yourself, what are their expectations for this book? So what might they have already read? So for example, if you look in the weight loss category of books, it's the #1 kind of best-selling topic of all time, right? Weight loss. And you'll see a whole bunch of different angles, right? Like there's that book called Skinny Bitch that came out a while ago about how models eat or something, right? And then there's a book about like self-journaling with the spiritual weight loss. And there's just books about how to work out hard and books about self-discipline. So there's like a million different ways to approach weight loss, right?
Right.
And so kind of getting clear on which particular subset of that audience are you talking to? What are they passionate about? What are they worried about? Because we all, anyone that needs to lose weight, it's for different reasons, right? Like
Sure.
I didn't sleep for years and years with my special needs kid, and not sleeping makes you a little bit overweight.
Yeah.
Or a lot. So like I had very different problems that had to be solved as a medical weight loss, hormone thing, right? In addition to stop eating sugar, right?
Right.
So basically you need to know what they might have already read. You need to know what's comparable around you. You need to know how you're going to stand out from what's around you. and specifically to speak to those people. And then you need to use a tone and a style and organization, and your content all needs to be geared toward those people. So if you're trying to write to women who are trying to deal with something difficult in their marriage, and you start out with the research on, you know, what men are doing and how it's harming them, that's going to sound like an academic book that's not about what that woman's actual problem is. She needs to decide whether she's divorcing this person or not, right? And she needs the guidance on that. She doesn't need the academic research about how all of this stuff affects, you know, the guy in her life, right?
Right.
And so you need to like know, like, if I want to share this information, how do I share it so it's relevant to this person right now and their exact problem this minute, right? And your style and your tone of voice also applies. Like if you're using all kinds of professional lingo, that's not going to speak to that layman audience, right? You need to save that for the book where you're speaking to colleagues in the field.
Right.
So you kind of need to think about your book as a macrocosm and a microcosm. How do you look at this from a big picture, marketing standpoint, audience, and then how do you take those concepts and apply them to every single tiny choice you make in your book about how you write it? And one of the things you can do, especially with nonfiction, because we're kind of focusing on that, is go find books in the nonfiction market about writing for the nonfiction market. There's one I read years ago. It's called Damn, Why Didn't I Write That? And it's basically about this guy that's nonfiction writer, and he discovered like the top 10 best-selling topics in the world for nonfiction. And some of them were crazy simple books that sold hundreds of thousands of copies. Like he discovered that cat owners are big book buyers about cats, right?
That's funny.
And he's like, I need to get a cat and write a book about it. So like that's a fun book out there. There's a lot. You can just kind of Google nonfiction how-to and whatnot. But to learn about that market so you understand how it works, so you know how to differentiate yourself. And another way you can do that is to work with a business coach. If you're writing a book, other than just a straight memoir, and even a straight memoir, you're trying to make an impact, right? And there are business coaches that will help you understand how to make an impact in the world with that book, even if you don't have a business yet for it. But working with a business coach like Amy can really help you get clear on what you're going to do with this book and how it's going to impact people and what you want them to do next. And that's a really important next part to talk about is what are they going to do when they finish your book? So I don't know if you have thoughts on that you want to share, Amy, or?
Yes, I have so many thoughts. One thought is that this, you know, it's kind of a chicken before the egg question where people are like, well, should I build my platform first, or should I write my book first, or should I write the book and then build the platform? And in my opinion, you really have to be doing both at the same time. So that writing process is going to take time. From the time you conceptualize the book, you start working with your writing coach, or your editing team, you know, just to, and it makes a huge difference, you guys. I'm part of a writer's workshop, and I'm telling you, the people who have writer's coaches, their books are far superior earlier on, and they spend a lot less time during the editing because they had that direction in the beginning. But the minute you start doing that, that's like a year. During that time, you can be releasing video, you know, you can be using your topic to get booked and to speak and to be bringing people into your community, your Facebook group, your email list. There's a lot of things that you can do so that when the book launches, you already have the audience. So I think that you should use all of the content that you're creating for the book, and you should be out there using that content to draw people in so they're already interested by the time you release the book. So there's a lot that you can do there, and I think that it is old and naive to think that we are going to be Joe March just, you know, writing until our fingers are black and then we happen to find a publisher. Like, it just doesn't work that way anymore. We have to build the audience. Otherwise, we don't get the publisher, as we talked about in the first video.
Yep, that's totally, I completely agree with that. It's all about building your platform and making your movement work at the same time. And also, sometimes you really need to be interacting with the people you're trying to help to even understand what to put in the book and how to put it in the book, right? Because they are going to use specific words to their experience, language, you know, thoughts, conversations, and you can have great content, but the way you frame it is slightly off. I think you shared a story about that in another conversation. Do you want to share that really quick?
If I could remember what exactly it was, I totally would. Oh, I remember. It was my client who had a program that she was naming, and she named the program something like Chaos to Peace. And she was, she put that offer in front of about 100 people and nobody bought. And so she's like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I said, well, the first thing you got to do is you got to go back and survey the people that didn't buy. So she went back and she asked them, and they were like, yeah, it just didn't really resonate with me. It didn't seem like something that I needed. And she said, okay, well, what does chaos mean to you? And they're like, I mean, and this was in 2020. So they're like, violence in the streets and unrest and, political corruption. And they're like, I just don't have that in my life. And so she said, okay, well, what is going on in your life? And then they would tell her things like, I'm struggling with time management, and I'm struggling with my relationships and creating connections. And, I've got negative self-talk. And that was exactly what she had meant when she was saying from chaos to peace. She was talking about internal chaos, and it just wasn't resonating at all. And so she went back and she changed the name of the program to Peace on Purpose, and it's been full ever since. And so sometimes it's just that your perception is not like what you want to tell them. You're trying to say it in a way that's not the way that they're ready to hear it. I really think it's important. You got to speak to your customers where they're at. I was considering writing a book a few years ago and surveyed a good 150 people. And when I did the surveys and I went through all of the data, I was like, okay, this is not the book to write. It's not the right book, and it's not the right time for the audience, but it showed me what my next book was going to be. So I think writing something that's really customer driven is always going to be really a smart business move.
Yeah, and it's really important because a lot of times people don't know what they need to know. That's one of the important things. If they're struggling with something in their life, right? They don't know what they don't know, so they don't know how to use the words to find what they're looking for. That's something in marketing. It's the famous, sell them what they need, but give them what they want, right? You have to use the language to speak to them so they know that you're the one to go to, and then you can enlighten them in the experience, right?
Yeah.
But you can't force them to be enlightened if they don't know what you're talking about from the beginning.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's really important to speak to your audience.
So one of the things that I would like to talk about is the support team. You mentioned having a business coach is a great support team for authors, but there's also writing coaches, there's also editors, there's different types of editors. And as a self-published author, or even somebody who is trying to go traditional publishing, I think sometimes we don't know what we need and understand the different roles that each one play. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yes, let me touch on that really quick. So as far as the difference between an editorial team and a writing coach, so a writing coach's job is to help you create and envision and to hold you accountable, right? So they're helping you get clarity on what you want to write, how you want to write it, how you're going to create it, the timelines. An editor is someone who's going to come in and they're going to see if you actually accomplished what you attempted to do with your writing coach. And they're going to do it from a slightly more objective standpoint, because they weren't with you in that creative birthing process. So they don't know that you meant to convey X, Y, Z here because they had a 2-hour conversation with you about it, right? And then you guys worked it all out and this sounds good to both of you. They're coming from the perspective of, I'm a fresh person, I'm imagining myself as the reader, what do I not know, right? And they're not gonna know as much about your topic either because they aren't the writing or business coach that specializes in X, Y, Z. And so they are a really good representative of your reader. And what they're looking for is, did you accomplish what you meant to accomplish? Do I know what you're writing about? Does it speak to me? Am I left with lots of questions and frustration, or do I feel like I've been transformed by the work? They look to see how the organization is. They're really expert at, does it flow well? Do you have clear thesis statements? Is it supporting your ideas all the way through? So they're kind of like that good test run before you go out into the world to see, like, what did you do that you didn't mean to do that you want to fix before it goes out to everyone, right? Before you get all those reviews left on your site. And the different types of editors, so a developmental editor is the one who would be that first look, and they're looking at your developed content, right? And sometimes a developmental editor can serve as in the way of a writing coach if you didn't have a coach in the first place. But really, if your book needs to be a little bit farther along, because they can kind of teach you how to write, but it's not really what their goal is. Right. And it's not necessarily even what their training is. So they can tell you stuff about writing and they know about it, but they may not be able to teach you in the efficient way that a writing coach would. But it's definitely better than not having feedback at all and just going out into the world, right? Because you can get very good feedback from a developmental editor. The next level in is a substantive editor. And their job is to, this is like in traditional publishing if you were to go through these steps, right? Their job is to, you've gone through the developmental, you've cleaned it all up, you've done beta testing with readers, which is also really important, right? So in your target market, not your mom, right? Not your best friend, but people that are actually in the target group you want to speak to. You get like anonymous beta readers, right?
Right.
And they don't know you and you don't know them, and they're giving you feedback, so you kind of know how the market's responding. So then you have a substantive editor, and their job is to make sure your prose is powerful, it's clean, it's compelling. They watch for any of those last developmental things that are confusing, right? So they're kind of giving it that last big sweep of content and power and how is it working. And then you have what's kind of the quality control side of editing, which is copy editing and proofreading. And copy editing is looking mostly at how clear and concise your language is, if you use the right synonyms, antonyms, right? And they kind of clean up wordiness, and they're looking for typos. And then a proofreader, they were called a proofreader because originally they only looked at the manuscript after it came back from the press as a proof. So it was a designed, ready to go looking book, and they were looking through for last mistakes and typos in that book, and formatting errors that could occur at the press. And now proofreaders can look at it before it goes to press as well, but they're really just looking for glaring typos, errors, etc.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the different range of editors. And a lot of people will hire someone who says they're an editor when they really need developmental work and or even a coach, and they're hiring like a proofreader, right? And that's just not going to help you make the impact that you're looking for. So that's kind of the big difference.
Well, and one of the things that I love about you guys is you can submit your work and you guys will look it over and say, okay, here's kind of what you're needing. Because, for me, the first time I went through this process, I ended up having to hire 2 different editors when I didn't plan on that and didn't know that was coming. And because one left a lot of mistakes. And so it was like, it ended up costing me twice as much, but I didn't even really get what I wanted because I was trying to hire the one-size-fits-all editor, right? And that there's not really a one-size-fits-all editor. And so I love that you guys will kind of break that down and tell people, okay, we've reviewed your pages or we've reviewed your concept. You really need a writing coach, or you really need line editing, or you're ready, copy editing, ready to go.
Yeah.
So that's super helpful.
Yep. And sometimes you are. I mean, it just depends on the person and the book, like where you are. If you're a brand new author, most of the time you need some kind of developmental feedback or coaching, generally speaking, if you want a really good book.
Yeah. And let's talk about that, because there's a culture right now in the small business community and in entrepreneurship to write a book as fast as possible and get it to market as fast as possible. And so there's a lot of books out there that are not really good books. And then you go and you try to use that book to submit to get you booked on a stage or to get you a new client. And the client's looking at that book and they're like losing interest too quickly, or they're noticing that there's mistakes in that book, or the book, the tone isn't right, and so they feel like it's not for them. And I feel like a bad book costs you business, and that is not what you want. So I do think it's important to slow down and really do it right if you're going to put a book out there.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's actually something that we care about a ton, in the sense that we will tell people, hey, we'll do whatever you want, but this is actually what you need. And let me tell you 5 or 6 times that this is not going to help you accomplish this, because it's really painful to watch a book go out that's going to make that person look less professional than what they wanted to do. And I've even had like editors or copy editors call me and go, they've thanked me in the acknowledgments. How can I, in a not tacky way, ask that they don't put my name in the book? And that's so awkward, right? You don't want to like tell someone, no, please don't thank me because I don't want my name on your work, right?
Right.
So it's kind of, if we're worried for you, you should be worried for you, right? So worry for you, so we don't need to be the ones staying up at night hoping that, your book didn't crash and burn at your first event.
Well, and so, I love this about your team. Like, even, my most recent thing is like, no, you legitimately have to cut 16,000 words out of your manuscript. I was like, no, but trying to argue for it. They're like, no, your readers, it will be too long. They will stop reading. It's more than what they expect. It's not right for this genre. Like, this is it. And I appreciate that candid honesty, because, I think sometimes we just want to, have it be what we want it to be, because it's our baby, it's our creation, and we don't want to limit the creation. But if you love it enough to create it, you should love it enough to make sure it's going to sell.
Yeah, I agree. If your goal is to be professional with it, make money with it, make an impact, you need to treat it like a product and be thinking about the people you're giving it to more than your own creative enjoyment. I mean, definitely that goes into it hugely, right? Like someone's not rewriting your book if they're editing it, but you do need to know that you're writing it for someone, and you need to keep that in mind when you put it out there.
Yeah. So if there was one thing that you wish you could tattoo across every author's forehead to help them be more successful, what would you say it is?
Next to understanding who you're writing to, I would say understanding where you're taking them with your book is the next biggest thing. So they don't have that standalone stepchild of a book that doesn't do anything for their career, their business, their movement. It's really important that you know what to put in the book and what to hold back for courses, for training, for coaching, for whatever individual transformation experience you're having with people. Just because it actually will really overwhelm people. Like none of us, like all the research on habits and all the research on change, right, is all about little small baby steps, right?
Right.
So people need to be given information about, principles and ideas about how something works and to have the vision of how it works. But the nitty gritty how to needs to come in your courses and in your other work. So you need to be planting those seeds so that they can say, okay, I see this, I'm going to try something out. I feel good about this. I would like to take next steps to really know how to dive down and make this happen in my life. And that's how you're leading people into your business, into your movement, making connections, is people want to engage more with you. If they love what you're saying, they want to know more about you. They want your help. They want your guidance, right? So that's like one of the biggest things I would say is make sure that your book is taking people somewhere and that it's leading to something that helps you also, because it's wonderful to make a difference in the world and share things. But if that's where that person stops and they can't progress past that, then that's sad for them. And it's sad for you that you put all that effort in and it didn't help you progress as well, right? Yeah. So that's a really important thing to make sure you're doing in your books.
Well, and also with that too, if your mission is to be able to have impact and change people's lives, do you want to have that with 10 people or do you want to have it with 10,000 people? And so, I think a lot of times people they don't want to think through the business because they just want to focus on the impact. But you guys, the impact and the business are one and the same. The business is what allows you to be able to have widespread impact instead of just reaching a small handful of people who quite honestly are probably in your warm market anyway, and you could just pick up a phone and have a phone call with them, right? Like if we want to reach out to people who have never heard us before and make an impact, then we have to have a plan for that, which includes writing the right book at the right time, having a structured book. It includes having a marketing plan. It includes understanding the publishing industry. It includes writing for the right person. Like there's just so many components to this. So if you are somebody who already has a book out there and it's not quite working for you, I would recommend that you start working on the next book rather than trying to fix any problems with the last one, because it's really hard to make those changes. I don't know. Do you agree with that, Angela?
Yeah, I would say that if you already have a book done and you didn't write it for the right people, you can try to revamp that book, but you might be rewriting it. You might be splitting it into 2 books, 3 books, right? So it might be as much work to revamp that book as it is to do a new one. It would depend on the book, but just plan on it being more of a rewriting experience than just changing up a few subheads, right? It's going to be a little bit more comprehensive.
Yeah, and if you are looking to get a book or you have one that's in progress and you want to make sure it's really on the right track, Angela's team offers book reviews. And so they'll look at the work that you have going on and they will tell you guys really honestly. Sometimes you get back the feedback and you're like, ow, that one stings a little bit, but it always makes your work better. And it comes from a place of they are so invested in you being successful with your work that they are going to tell you exactly what you need in order to set yourself up for the highest level of success. So we'll post a link to Angela's website. It also has some of the best author resources out there. So you can go and learn all about, traditional publishing, indie publishing, hybrid publishing. You can learn about the different genres. It's a wealth of information for authors, and definitely you should have them in your toolkit. So Angela, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. That was great. I really enjoyed being with you, Amy.
Awesome. All right, my friends, if you have not watched the first video, go back and watch that. And if you are new to the channel, make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell notification so you can get notified every time we release new content. And we will see you all very soon. Thanks, everyone.